Welcome to Burn On, Not Out, the podcast for founders and CEOs who are done being the bottleneck. I'm Brooke Dukes, and each week we expose the structural patterns that slow execution, overload founders, and keep decisions routing back to the top. And we install clear decision rules, defined ownership, and operating discipline that scales. Let's get into it. I want to ask you something. How many hours did you spend in meetings last week? Not calls that you chose, not strategy sessions that you initiated, all of it. Every check-in, every alignment conversation, every quick sync that wasn't quick. Now here's the question underneath that question. How much of your company actually moved forward because of those meetings? For most founders I work with, the answer is a little bit uncomfortable for them because what they discover is a lot of meetings, not a lot of movement. They're unnecessary. And the typical response to that problem is to fix the meetings. It must be a meeting problem. I've just got to train my team better. We need shorter agendas, stricter time limits, no meeting Fridays, standing meetings instead of sitting ones. Right? These things, they help and they don't fix the problem because the problem isn't the meetings. When the ownership is unclear, when people don't know who owns the final decision, people meet to figure out then who's responsible. When authority is undefined, people meet to get approval before they act. Because they're afraid, well, I'm not sure if this is mine. They don't want to take that risk. So when decisions aren't final, people meet to re-examine what they thought was settled. So the meetings, they're not the problem. They're not the disease. They're the fever. And if you keep treating the fever without diagnosing what's causing it, the fever keeps coming back. So today I want to show you exactly what your meeting volume is telling you about the structure of your company and what actually changes it. So let me describe something that happens in almost every founder-led company between $1 million to $15 million in revenue. The company's growing. The team's getting larger. More projects are running simultaneously. And at some point, usually quietly, usually without anyone deciding it, the calendar starts filling up. So first, it's a weekly leadership meeting. Then it's a weekly team sync up on top of that. Then a project check-in. Then another one. Then a standing alignment call that nobody remembers scheduling, but everyone keeps attending. And it's a vicious cycle. And the founder looks at their calendar and they think, how did this happen? What is going on? I don't have any time to do the work that has to get done. Well, here's how it happened. Meetings multiply when 3 structural conditions exist inside a company. So here's the first one. Ownership is unclear. When it isn't obvious who's responsible for a decision or an outcome, people meet to figure it out. Not because they're being inefficient, but because in the absence of clear ownership, a meeting is the only mechanism available to establish who should act. So I want you to think about how many meetings in your company start with some version of, I just wanted to make sure we're all aligned in who's handling this. That sentence right there is a structural gap that's wearing a calendar invite. So let's move into condition number 2. Authority isn't defined. When people don't know what they're allowed to decide without escalating, they schedule a conversation before they act. Because acting without permission in a system that hasn't defined permission is a risk. And smart professionals manage risk. So instead of deciding, they convene. They get the right people in a room. They present options. And they wait for someone, usually the founder, to give the signal that it's okay to move. Then finally, condition 3, decisions don't hold. This is the most important one. Because when decision shifts unexpectedly, when a call that was made last week gets reopened this week, teams stop trusting that decisions are final. And so before they commit fully to execution in a direction, they check in. They schedule an alignment meeting. They want to confirm the direction is still the direction before they spend time and resources moving in it. And more importantly, with this last one, when you reopen a decision, it's typically not because you have more information. It's typically because you're afraid. It's that 3 a.m. wake up, oh shit, this might not work. We better revisit this. And that costs money. It may not be hitting your P&L, but it is costing you money. In fact, for a company that is, let's say, $5 million in revenue, one overturned decision can cost them $2,000 to $5,000, just one, in team time and lost momentum. That's huge for a small business, huge for any business. So you really need to look at these 3 conditions, because here's what all 3 of them have in common. None of them are solved by better meeting hygiene. They are solved by installing the structure that makes the meetings unnecessary. Clear ownership means people don't need to convene to figure out who acts. Defined authority means people don't need to convene to get permission before they move. Decisions that hold mean people don't need to convene to confirm direction before they execute. When those 3 things exist, meetings get shorter. Not because you put a timer on them, but because there's less to resolve in them. So let me make this even clearer. Because not all meetings are a problem. Some meetings are genuinely valuable. Strategy sessions, quarterly planning, creative collaboration, moments where the whole team needs to think together. Those meetings have purpose. But there are 3 types of meetings that exist in most founder-led companies that should not exist at all. The first one is the permission meeting. This is the meeting where someone presents a plan, fully developed, fully researched, and then waits for the founder to approve it before it can move forward. You've seen this in meetings. A leader walks in with a slide deck or a document. They walk through the plan step by step. The team nods along, and then the room goes quiet, and everyone turns to the founder. Because the system has taught them that the final signal to move comes from one person. The permission meeting isn't a meeting problem. It's an authority problem. When a leader has to bring a fully formed plan to the founder for approval, that leader doesn't actually own the decision. They own the preparation. The founder owns the decision. And until that changes structurally, the permission meeting will keep appearing on your calendar. Here's meeting type 2, the rescue meeting. This is the meeting that gets called when a project stalled. Something isn't moving. Nobody's quite sure why. And instead of the owner of that project making a call and advancing it, a meeting gets scheduled. The rescue meeting feels productive because it involves action. People show up. They talk through the issue. They leave with a list of next steps. But 2 weeks later, the project stalls again, and another rescue meeting gets scheduled. The rescue meeting is a symptom of unclear ownership. When it's not obvious who's responsible for a project's forward momentum, no one takes the risk of pushing it forward on their own. So it sits until a meeting is called, until the founder gets involved, until the decision gets made at the top again. So here's meeting number 3 that needs to go away, the alignment meeting. This is the most insidious one because it sounds healthy. We just need to make sure everyone's aligned. Alignment meetings exist to confirm that direction hasn't changed, which means alignment meetings exist because direction has changed before. Think about this carefully. If your team trusts that decisions hold, if they know that the direction set last week is still the direction this week, they don't need an alignment meeting. They just execute. Alignment meetings are the calendar footprint of decision instability. Every time a founder has reopened a decision, changed direction unexpectedly, or re-entered a project that was delegated, the team adds a layer of confirmation-seeking behavior to protect themselves from wasted effort. That confirmation-seeking behavior shows up as alignment meetings. You don't fix alignment meetings by canceling them. You fix them by making your decisions hold. So I want to tell you about a period in my own company where my calendar became completely unmanageable. I'm talking about weeks where I would finish a day of back-to-back meetings and realize I hadn't made a single meaningful strategic decision all day. I had been in conversations from morning until late afternoon. And yet my to-do list was longer at the end of the day than when I started. I did what most founders do. I tried to fix the meetings. I blocked focus time on my calendar. I set rules about meeting-free mornings. I shortened every standing meeting by 15 minutes. And for about 2 weeks it helped. And then the calendar filled back up again. Different meetings, same problem. Because I hadn't changed the structure. I had changed the schedule. And the schedule's not the structure. The structure's who owns what, who decides what, and when things escalate. And in my company at that point, none of that was defined clearly enough. My team was smart and capable and genuinely trying to do their jobs well. But they were operating in a system that required them to check in before they moved. Because I'd never clearly told them in writing with specific boundaries what they could decide without me. The day I started mapping decision ownership, role by role, category by category, the meeting volume started dropping. Not because I canceled anything, but because my team stopped needing to schedule things to get permission they could now give themselves. So here's what actually reduces meetings. 1, structural installation. 3 components. Component 1, written decision ownership. For every leadership role in your company, write down what that person can decide without you. Not vaguely, specifically. Not owns marketing. That's a responsibility statement. What you want is they can approve campaign spend up to $10,000 without CEO input. They can adjust messaging and creative direction without approval. They must escalate any channel strategy shift that affects the annual plan. That's a decision ownership statement. When that document exists, the permission meeting disappears because the leader doesn't need to schedule a conversation to find out if they're allowed to move. They already know. The authority is written down. So here's the second component. A single escalation rule. Most companies have no defined escalation threshold. Everything can escalate, which means everything does escalate. So you want to install one rule. Pick a category. Financial decisions are the easiest starting point. Define the threshold below which no escalation is needed. Every decision under that number belongs fully to the owner of that function. No meeting, no approval, no check-in. Just a decision made by the person who owns it. What you'll find within 2 weeks of installing this rule is that a significant portion of your weekly meeting volume was driven by decisions that sat below whatever threshold you set. They were coming to you not because they required your judgment, but because no one had told them they didn't. So here's component number 3, a decision log. This is the simplest one, and it's the one most founders skip. Every significant decision that gets made, write it down. Not a novel one line, quick. What was decided? When and by whom? I'm talking every decision, not just the big ones. So it needs two things. First, it creates a reference point that reduces the need for alignment meetings. When someone wants to confirm direction, they check the log before they schedule a call. Second, it makes decision reversals visible. When a founder can see in writing that they've reopened the same category of decision 3 times in 6 weeks, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. And patterns you can see are patterns you can correct. So here's what happens when these 3 components exist inside a company. Permission meetings stop appearing on the calendar because authority is defined and written down. Rescue meetings become rare because ownership is clear and people know the decision belongs to them. Alignment meetings shrink or they disappear because decisions hold and the team stops needing to confirm direction before they move. Your calendar doesn't fill up because you have too many problems. It fills up because your structure requires human conversation to compensate for what written rules and defined authority could handle automatically. Install the structure. The calendar follows. If what you heard today resonates, if you recognize your own calendar in any of what I described, the next step is to look at the full decision structure inside your company, not just meeting volume, the whole system. Where authority is unclear, where ownership is ambiguous, where escalation has no design threshold. That's what the CEO Decision Reset walks through. It's a free masterclass on how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. It's not a sales pitch with a teaching wrapper. It's a structural diagnosis and one practical correction you can apply before the session ends. The link's in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Burn On, Not Out. If decisions are still flowing back to you, don't just take notes. Install structure. Watch the CEO Decision Reset to see exactly how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, structure before strategy.